Hi, Sophie, and welcome to my podcast. Thanks so much for joining.
I'm so excited to be here.
This is episode 5 of Book Talk, and the premise of Book Talk is I just try to rope people into being on my podcast. Sophie picked the book, so why don't you introduce yourself and the book that we read?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, Lillian. I am a fan of the podcast.
Yay!
I have seen the previous episodes and done my homework, so I'm very excited. So I'm Sophie. I'm Lillian's friend. I live in Singapore. I share a mentor / father figure with Lillian.
Oh, it's so true. Shout out Jim.
In Jim McGregor.
We will send this to you.
Yes.
You will be one of the 10 views.
Jim is the source of all the cool people I know in Singapore.
Aww.
And so, yes, that's a special connection we have. I chose this book because it's kind of a combination of what you shared draws people to the podcast, in that it is a popular book that everybody is talking about.
Yeah. But I actually hadn't heard anything about it, so you were really had your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, I think it's more because it's such a unique format, and it started as like a social media thing and then became a book. Cool. I think it had been, it was a question of like, is an epistolary novel now gonna work?
Yeah.
Is it a format that I think people would be drawn to? And I was curious to explore it with you and your mind.
Okay, you have to say what the book is.
Okay, sorry. The book is The Correspondent.
Yeah.
By Virginia
Sophie bought
Evans.
me this.
Fun.
I feel like we've consumed some art together.
Yes.
We went to a play.
Yeah, we did.
And we saw Hamnet together.
Oh my God.
And I feel like I really enjoy talking to you about art, and I'm like very excited for your takes and like your experience. Yeah. Maybe before we jump into opinions, we can flesh out a little bit more the premise, like who is our main character. You mentioned it's an epistolary novel, so everything is in the form of letters.
Yeah, so Sybil is the main character, and I love her because she's sort of...
I would die for her.
Yeah, she's so fun to read.
She's old. She's like in her 70s.
Yeah, so she goes from, I think, her early to late 70s over the course of the book, which takes place over about a decade of exchanged letters between her and literally everyone in her life, from her son and daughter to her best friend to her, to a customer service rep via emails to her next door neighbor to a guy who hits on her at a funeral. Like, it's a ton of different sort of relationships tied together in one. And what's beautiful about the way she thinks is it's very reflective. I think she has a beautiful sense of time. She's retired. She likes to garden. She likes to sit and be present where she is. And so because of that, she is torn between, I think, being both very reflective about her own life and experience, and also just like processing and reflecting the present in real time in this luxurious way with time that I think we don't have that much in the contemporary life. I feel like this year especially I've been drawn to like really slow stuff, and I feel like this is a slow novel in a way I liked.
It's really interesting. Like you said, it's very bold to do an epistolary novel because actually we're not really there for any of the action. It's like all recounted or told like through the lens of either someone who's written back to her or she's writing a letter to someone else. So actually, like, some of the big events, we don't even know what happened. We just like hear it later what happens. So for me, it felt kind of fast.
I guess you're right in that like the novel kind of flies by, right? Like when you're reading it.
Or like there's time jumps, I guess.
And she also has a sort of, we'll get to it, I'm sure, but her son passes away, and part of the letters that she writes are processing her daily life in a long letter to her son who passed, Gilbert, that she never sends, right?
Yeah.
So there's that kind of metronome in the background of this endlessness with this letter that will never be read, right? And then there's such a difference in how she'll tell the same moment to different characters about that she just like, wants to process it differently. Like with Rosalie, her best friend, she's like, OMG girl, this just happened, and it's very fast paced, whatever. Yeah. And then when she's writing to Harry or something, a person with whom I think she's trying to teach or instruct, or the girl who like writes a book report about her life, she really takes her time. And so I guess it's more the telling of the same moment in multiple ways that felt slower in a way that allowed me to savor just the many ways we see moments.
I totally agree now that you've said that. And I also feel another way in which it at least forces me to slow down.
Yeah.
If I'm going to like try to draw a lesson or apply it to my own life, it's just the act of writing letters is so considered, especially the way she does it. So I do have a pen pal and I do write letters sometimes, but I always just like write whatever's on the top of my head and then send it. But Sybil talks about like she drafts her letters. She like makes sure that she has such a respect for the written word because she's also a legal clerk by profession. And I feel like she puts so much care into her letters. That whole process is like a considered and slow one.
I'm curious to hear more about your practice of letter writing, because I think it must be interesting because she obviously writes letters to like and says multiple times to anyone who will
that's
receive
really
them,
cool.
Right? And so it's a way she communicates, but I'm sure for the recipient of these letters, they're not like using letters to communicate. So in her sort of doing something very common, it becomes something very rare and special to the people in her life. Is the person that you, when you like write letters with the pen pal, like I'd love to learn more about how you guys met and how that started.
I have, so as someone that writes letters, I feel like I do have a few gripes. So I feel like the only reason this book hits is because we have both the reply, like the letter and the response. And when you're when you're actually writing letters, I often forget like what I wrote last. You know what I mean? And I only have the response. So Harry, the boy that she writes to once a month, he like copies his letters, but obviously I don't do that, and I don't think that's like a normal practice. So for me, I didn't really relate, like this is clearly done, it almost felt like an artifice. Like it's clearly done to effect because it's a really compelling way to tell the story of her life. But as someone who writes letters, I feel like it's a much more alive thing where it wouldn't like fit in such a neat timeline. And I guess all that just to say that I usually forget like what I wrote about last, and like it feels a bit more one-sided than like having everything put together. In a book like this, that would be like my first kind of reaction. The second reaction is I was worried that Evans would like glamorize it too much. And
like the practice
of letter writing. Not that I don't love writing letters, but more just it just feels like less authentic or less true to just be like, oh, things are better back then, like we should all be writing letters. But then the way she saved it for me is that she does actually address later in the book how Sybil uses letters as like a defense mechanism to be less vulnerable with people close in her life, especially with her daughter. That insertion into the book made me feel like, okay, this is not just a total glazing of letter writing. There's an actual reason why. There's actually many reasons why Sybil writes letters. It's because she was adopted, and the only thing she had from her mom was a letter. And so then she wanted to start writing letters.
Oh my God, that part.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And then she didn't know what her place was in the world, and so she just started writing to random people, and that she really liked being able to put down what she wanted to communicate in black and white rather than it being a conversation. So I think that provided a lot of comfort to her. And then she's had a lot of trauma in her life, and I feel like the letter always puts a little bit of distance as opposed to having to actually communicate in person or in a form of communication that's a lot more live. So I'm glad it wasn't just a super rosy depiction of like we should all write letters. But I will say the one thing I really, because I just don't think it's efficient, and like I have so much to say and my hand is gonna hurt, and I want feedback quickly.
I guess that's part of what I wanted to ask you about, because when you talk about writing letters, you're also we were talking about this too, that you recently like went on a work trip and you talk so much that you like lost your voice for like weeks. I think we both are people who care and think a lot about communication and how we communicate and in what fora is the best way to convey a message. And I guess I'm curious, in your practice of letter writing, where like are there things that you would rather communicate over letter, or people you would rather communicate with in that form? And is it because it's sort of like a habit that you communicate with that person for that reason, or is there like, are there things that you feel are better expressed that way?
My current pen pal, I think we just like cute stationery.
That's it. That's
but
the level
when
of
I
depth.
lived in China, my dad and I
get
used to write letters, and that I feel
Cute.
like is an ideal form of communication for him and his generation. I think I learned things about him that I would not have learned otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think he communicated, he's also a lawyer, and I feel like he really wrote great letters, like almost a little bit like Sybil. Like we don't do it now, but I think for him, it definitely was like a superior form of communication. So of the letters that Sybil writes, I feel like I related the least in terms of like the authenticity of it and being able to resonate with it to the letters that were to like the close people in her life. But the thing that I liked the most were like her letters to Joan Didion and like random people. Because she says in the book, most people, if you write a letter, they will write back. So the fact that she writes, even like the letters to the head of the English department.
That was one of my favorite.
Yeah,
I made a note
or
to
like
talk
the
about
letters
that.
with Harry. Like I feel like those letters, they make sense to me why they are letters.
Yeah.
And I guess she and Rosalie, it's more a generational thing. Like they just grew up without having email and texting. But if they could learn WhatsApp, I feel like they could eat up a WhatsApp chat. Like I don't know.
Well, and
it's just not very convenient to communicate to your besties. You have to wait, like, at least for me, my pen pals in the U.S., it takes like 2 weeks for a letter to get here. Yeah. What do you think?
That's really funny. No, I mean, I feel like it's interesting to read this through the prism because I don't write letters and don't have that practice, except actually my dad and I write each other long emails. Which is very
that's
similar.
that's very similar. So what is the cadence of your emails with your dad?
My dad writes really long, beautiful emails.
Yeah.
And sometimes I will just call him when I get one and we discuss it. Or other times I'll write back. It depends on kind of what's in the email.
And do you write a long email?
It depends.
Okay.
So sometimes, and again, like if it's something where I want to describe something and ruminate a little bit more, my dad's an artist and I think really appreciates learning about how other people think. And a lot of his writing is about things that are in his environment and how he feels about them and what's going on in our town and things that he cares about that I love and that he wants to share and or something he saw, like a piece of art or something that he's thinking about. And so if I have something like that to communicate, I'll write it down, but often I just like want to hear his voice after I've read the letter. So that's where that comes from. But I guess I just think it's interesting to read a novel though through the lens of like, this should be realistic. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I read this being like, this lady old, you know, she'd be doing this.
You're so right. And so, it's realistic to her, I guess.
But it's not, it's
but
also.
Not to me. Yeah.
Right, but it's different because it's not, I think for you, it's a practice that is real for you, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's like maybe with my dad, I do this, but it's not like a thing.
So you don't hold it to the same.
It's more of an actual artifact in a way where I'm like, oh, it's a piece of art in artifact, whereas for you, it's like maybe a reflection of a practice that you see differently.
But it could have been way worse. Like, I was a little worried it would be, like, gimmicky.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's very artfully done. And, like, what I said was on, like, a subtle level. Like, I would say, like, in general.
Yeah.
It's, like, really well put together. And I feel like the way things were revealed didn't feel like gotcha moments or anything. I felt like they were nicely revealed. And, I mean, I cried a lot, I think, in the book.
It's very moving.
Did you cry?
I think. Yes. I cried at the part... I put it on page 54. It's the part where basically she's writing a letter to Harry. And so over the course of the novel, Harry grows up, right? So he starts as this kid.
I think you should talk about Harry.
I'll introduce him a little bit. So he's the child of a former colleague of Sybil's, who's very bright. He's autistic. And he writes like on the 1st of every month or something to her. I think she responds like the 15th of the month.
That's right.
So it's every 2 weeks, but it's, monthly aggregate letters. And over the course of their relationship, basically, he is growing up, he goes to a new private school, and things aren't going well. His letters when he's younger are sort of like bullets of his day, and they're very cute.
Oh, true. I forgot.
And I love how, like, business they are as, like, a little kid. It's just like, here's what I did. I went outside and I ate this, and I did this, and my mom said this. And then at the end, basically, he writes her this thing that says, "This will be my last letter." And she doesn't understand why he wants to stop writing to her, so she writes a letter to his father asking about it, and then Harry attempts suicide, and so you find out that the last letter was because he was planning on ending his life. And so after which point he actually moves in with Sybil. And part of what I love about this novel is that as the plot develops, it's communicated in such an indirect way.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
I feel like I also wanted to, we can deep dive on that at a different time, but I wanted to learn about that from you because I think being a person who has friends and like community all over the world, sometimes something really big will happen with a friend of mine, and maybe we've been in a group chat talking about something else, or like we've just been communicating about like a trip we're taking or something, and something big is happening in their life, and then I don't know, and then it like comes to me in a different
other ways. Oh,
and then I'm just like, wait, when did you like go to Japan for 3 weeks, or when did that? And like I feel like there's always this sense that like, yeah, these things are happening indirectly for other people. Anyway, I digress. So the moment that I got emotional in this book was when Harry is writing to her and asking about her being lonely. And this is when he's younger, and he's kind of pre-thinking about that time. And he says, you like live alone in your house and all of this. Do you ever feel lonely? And she writes, I wonder, Harry, are you asking if I am lonely because you are trying to find a way to tell me that you are?
Yeah.
Don't worry, dear, you can simply tell me.
Yeah.
And I think that sentence really reflects who Sybil is, because the big tension, I think, in her character is she's very bright, right?
Yeah.
So she's empathetic enough to know that he needs her.
Yeah.
And her communication is very direct
It's
back.
super direct,
Which I think, especially to empathetic, sensitive people, can rub people the wrong way, but is done in such kindness.
Yeah.
And I thought that question is so grown up, too, when you ask someone about them being lonely or them being away. There's a saying in Arabic just about, like, if you give someone a compliment, and I think about it every time I give someone a compliment because I hate compliments, or every time I receive one. It's for receiving. And it's like, the phrase is like, from your eyes, and you like touch your eyes like this.
Okay.
And the idea is like, only a person like you could compliment me because you can only see something that you have in yourself.
Yeah.
Because Arabic is just the most poetic, perfect language ever.
Yeah, and also just like, that's so beautiful. Yeah, okay.
And so to this point, right, she's seeing that this young person can only see through his own lens and is seeing loneliness maybe in places where it is or isn't. And I thought that was, very moving. But I'm wondering what got you.
That reminds me of one thing that I really like about the book, which is Sybil's growth, even as a 70-year-old woman. Yeah. Like I feel so stoked to be old now, because I feel like I had this preconceived assumption that I basically would be developed by 55 or 60 or whatever.
Love it.
But Sybil, the book is like 10 years, you said, or something like that. And she really grows a lot. She has very difficult conversations, like with her daughter. She, like, I would say, like, makes a lot of progress in, like, reconciling her guilt over the death of her son, which we later find out she feels like directly responsible for. The loneliness thing is what made me think about that, because in this passage she says something earlier on, like, I'm not lonely, like, I have my gardening club, I have my letters, I have my correspondence. But then I really love how she develops, because later in the book she does mention, like, these letters have put distance, maybe, and she's like opens her heart to love. Yes. She's like courting 2 men, by the way, but again,
she's an icon.
She grows so much because she kept her neighbor at an arm's length for like years. When I think it was like very obvious to other people that he was like in love with her. And then by the end, I feel like she realizes, like, maybe I am lonely, and like maybe I can open myself up to like a relationship with this man. And so I just thought that was so inspiring, that like at age 72 or whatever, you could still like do so much personal work and like change so much. But a lot of what you said about the indirectness, I have thought about in terms of like the art of the catch-up. I used to get like kind of stressed, like I would like almost like take notes, like to make sure I covered everything, because I didn't want this scenario to happen. I love it. Yeah. Or like people would tell me and I would take notes because I wouldn't want to forget. It's interesting how that's like navigated in the letter writing thing, because I think a lot of her letters to like Rosalie are making sure she covers like all the high points and like has all her bases covered and like making sure she's reporting. But it feels very natural because it's also like the big juicy things in her life. But obviously she would report.
Right. And those are the only ones when she uses like capital letters and like crazy
so right.
punctuation. Like she lets herself loose a little bit more, whereas like she takes much more of authoritative or teaching tone in a lot of her other
So that's the other thing I wanted to say in response to what you were saying, which is like, I think it's extremely impressive how the author embodies different tones. The fact that the author can write as a young boy, write as like a lawyer, write as all these different characters, I think she did a good job. What do you think?
Of like embodying, the response letters. Yeah, that's true, because I guess we've talked mostly about Sybil's letters and less about like the people writing back. She did a really good job of writing those, and I felt like especially one of my favorite ones that you brought up earlier is with the dean of the English department.
Oh my God, love
Melissa. Yeah, so she's the head of the University of Maryland English department, so she takes over as dean, right? And Sybil previously, under the former dean, had been going to and auditing all of these different classes and learning English, in their English department rather. And she writes to Melissa to try to get into a class, and Melissa's kind of like, hell no, and doesn't respond. And so she goes off with her friends, and then again, in that beautiful indirect way, she shares, I think, to Rosalie that she actually goes to the, very Sybil, she actually goes to the university, sits her ass down, and realizes that the, dean is a young black woman who is super powerful and a poetry professor. Yeah. And in her first email, she had said, I don't like poetry classes.
She was like, I can audit this and this at these times, but no poetry, please. I'm not a fan of poetry.
Right. Which is like, yes, go off, Sybil. Get your two boyfriends.
You're too direct, girl.
No poetry.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 boys, no poems. And so for Sybil. So she basically, and then this, it turns out this woman is just trying to assert, control and authority, and is sort of figuring out her role and place at the university. And
she's struggling.
Kind of misconstruing Sybil's insistence as, exploiting her position or whatever. And so they actually become friends. And I think it's part of why I love what you said about Sybil's growth is that that's such a relationship that grows then into this super informal, supportive mentorship relationship. Moments like that, storylines like that were very surprising. And I think to your point on other letters that came back that were interesting were from Felix's boyfriend.
Yes, that was a good one. Only one letter from him. Yeah, yes. So Felix is her adopted, but they're both adopted. It's her brother, and he's in a long-term relationship with his boyfriend, and he thinks that he cheated on him, but there might have been a misunderstanding.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. And he sort of shares in this letter, he writes it being I know that you receive letters, and that this is how, people communicate with you,
exactly.
And let me communicate my side of the story. And this whole time you've, Felix is her adopted brother, lives in Paris with this, cute guy, and everything's, going really well for him. He's sort of this failed writer, but he's got an article in Vanity Fair or something, and so things seem to be looking up, and then gets cheated on. And what I like about that letter is it's written by someone who you can tell is not comfortable writing letters. He's Felix was not around. This other man misunderstood. I loved the companionship. Yeah. We would take long walks together. Just these very Hemingway subject object sentences. Yeah. And it was such a beautiful failed attempt at communication that was written down, and I thought it was beautiful.
I love hearing that from your perspective, because I was so focused on the partner reached out, is Sybil gonna intervene, what is the dynamic here,
what's the tea?
That I didn't even think about. But that's so spot on. He was like, I'm appealing to you, and I know that you like to receive letters, so I'm gonna appeal to you through this letter to try and help me, because Felix refused to speak to him.
Yes.
So this was his last resort.
And I think it shows too how she was able to maintain a real closeness and intimacy through this. With at least Felix and other people she loved. Yeah.
It's so interesting because we are reading the letters, but she does spend a lot of time in person with these people. Felix comes to visit, Harry stays with her. She goes to boyfriend number one's place a couple times.
In Texas.
Yeah. I really loved that letter because he hit on her at a funeral of her former
boss.
Boss. Yeah. Her response back was really sassy, and it was such a joy to read. But okay, one thing I did want to discuss with you is Sybil's kind of experience with being an ambitious woman at that time, because I feel that's definitely a theme that Virginia Evans was trying to touch upon. She has kind of a back and forth with a reporter who has done maybe some kind of piece about her or her boss, and says something about like, why did she decide to leave being a clerk to go work for her boss? She was on the path to be doing something better, but then she decided to put all her eggs in one basket with her boss. And then Sybil says something about like, this is the only professional working relationship I've had where I was like treated like an equal. And then I feel like that was the seed for a few different relationships that happened in the book, including with like the English professor, including with maybe the young high schooler. Something that I admired so much about Sybil is that she, even though she's like very stubborn and pig-headed and like black and white, she like cares, and like I feel like it's like a feminist icon.
Totally.
Thoughts? What are your thoughts? That was a lot of
we built
like
to feminist
rambling, but like I think some people kind of struggle with that kind of like feminism, but I love that kind of feminism.
Yeah, say more about what that
like. I just feel like she was a trailblazer. She didn't really play into feeling like a victim ever. I think it's fine to acknowledge that we all have different privileges, but I think it can be a little tricky when you fall into a very like, I'm so disadvantaged mindset, and that is just like so antithetical to who Sybil is. She just comes across as someone who really knows what she wants. She views the world in very black and white terms, which is not always the best, but I think it really served her in her career. And I feel like that is something that she is able to impart on like these other kind of mentee figures that come up in the book.
I think in terms of her career, so I find her very, I really relate to this. I find her very loyal and very monogamous, which are both things I love.
Yeah.
Like I am like so monogamous. I've been with the same dude for like a real long time. I like have had the same friend. I mean, I like make new friends, but I've had like the same. We're new friends. Friends. Yeah. But I have had the same like core squad since I was like maybe out the womb, you know, like 5 or 10 years old. If I like a song, I like only listen to that song.
Interesting.
So I really relate to those pieces of her, but I also think, I also find a tension between what you're saying, right, which is her natural leadership ability, her not, like, she's not a sheep in the herd. She, like, is doing her own thing.
And she really owns it. I feel like because of the adopted background, she's just very like, I'm different. I'm going to do, that's why she's a really good mentor to Harry, because he also feels super different from everyone else.
Yes, I agree. And I think there's a huge tension in the book, which is part of what makes her interesting between, and I don't mean to like make it, I don't think there's only 2 tensions, but between her being so
that's spot on.
rigorous,
that's spot on,
and also such a control freak and so risk averse. Like she doesn't visit Fiona in London, and I think
that's because she's scared of traveling. Because the last time she traveled, her son died.
Yes, but she is so scared. And I think that's part of what is in tension.
She's so fascinating.
Yes, but I think to your exact point, right? She's so scared, and I think that that's what's in the tension between her incredible ability to like produce and control her life. She sits in this indecision between these 2 men because she's like almost too, not like afraid to let them down, but she's like kind of can't really process what's happening to her. And then just the fact that like she finds out she has a sister in London.
We go on like a genetic testing tangent.
Exactly.
She discovers family.
Exactly. And so, and she like, then she has this beautiful moment at the end where she travels and, you know, writes to her neighbor who's been in love with her. I think that this is a real moment of her growth, right? Where she writes to him and says, my whole life I didn't travel, and maybe you can come with me and we can go to Paris. And even in her old age, even as she's going blind, right? Like towards
that's
the end,
another thing.
There's this tension exactly between her fear, and I think her fear of her blindness, right? Like overarches all of it. So it's hard for me in some ways to see her as the strong feminist that she presents in these letters, because she's sat in her house. You know? So it's kind of this, neither are incorrect. It's just this like powerful ability to hold all of it.
When I think about it, there's actually so much going on, because I forgot she's also going blind.
Yes.
So this would be my critique that I would love to hear your thoughts on. I feel we could have pared it a little bit down.
Totally.
For example,
we hallmarked slightly.
Yeah.
And I do love a Hallmark movie.
Exactly. What I would take out is this vendetta plot line of
the Desi
Desi thing. I think it was a little bit veering into thriller that wasn't really necessary. Basically, she helped her boss rule on a lot of cases, and there was one case where she feels really guilty because they probably made the wrong decision, and they sent the husband away. The mom came to see her with the boys, and so this boy, who is now grown up, is like writing her scary letters and comes and chops her roses in her garden. And I feel like the reason it was included is because Virginia Evans wanted to really push on the theme of like the guilt she feels around Gilbert's death.
Yep.
But I don't think we needed it. Like, I think we could have taken that out. And then, I mean...
Awesome.
Yeah, I would take out Fossum. I already told Sophie this. I just feel like I loved it. It could just be a separate short story. The character had enough of her own growth. Like, totally. The love and reflecting on her life. The whole thing with her daughter, where they're, like, kind of estranged, basically. Mm-hmm. I just feel like there was enough there that I didn't also need these little, like, side mysteries.
I think that's true for sure. I think there could have been less people with whom for my she taste, corresponded. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
And I think, like, in aggregate, that's fine. I loved the Desi part.
What?
Just because...
Wow.
Because he was, like, so...
Really?
Yeah, because...
I love filming this podcast.
It was... I think it was the only moment... Like, we're talking about her fear, right? I think it's the only thing that she is publicly afraid about. To anyone else.
To external people.
And
that's a good point.
There's this threat of her past.
That's such a good point.
That's then embodied in a character.
In a real manifestation.
And because I think without this, to your earlier reading of her as like also the parts of her that are really strong and leadery and mentory and like someone you want to sort of have around.
Yeah.
You know, she was like a public clerk and really messed with this guy's family and
See, that's the thing is like her whole black and white, the world is good because there's structure. I just don't really subscribe to that.
Totally.
And so I just feel like what she did was not that bad. I mean, I understand what you're saying and like the role it played in this story.
Yeah.
But like, there's no way she made hundreds of judgments. There's no way you're going to make the right call on all of them. And like, I don't know. I thought it was going to be something worse, to be honest. But I guess that would have made it even more like Gone Girl, like too much.
Yeah.
But
I think for me where that plot line petered out was when she like wrote a letter to the dad that so basically she wrongs the dad of this guy, Desi Martinelli, and he goes and chops her flowers and stuff, and he dies in jail, the dad, right?
Yeah, Desi's dad.
Right. And so she like, and then the mom goes back, I forget where they're from.
Italy,
yeah. The mom goes back to Italy and has this like difficult life.
Yeah.
And so like there's a letter that she writes, I believe, to the dad that just like isn't... And then, like, he never responds and to the letter in jail. And, like, that for me, I was just like, there could have just been, like, a flower harassment situation. And we could have just dealt with the dad. I don't know why we need to have 3 separate characters in this subplot. We're already deep in the subplot.
Yeah.
But I think, to your point, also, these subplots distract from the blindness thing. And my critique is actually about that piece. Because I don't think that it's consistently carried through the book. And I understand why, right? She doesn't want to, like, share with people, like, her condition. But she has this, like, little car accident that then creates this, like, awareness that she has that she's going blind. And so you're kind of thinking about it maybe throughout the book that there will be an end point to these letters. But I feel like it then is kind of jammed in the last, like, 8th of the book where she's like, I suddenly can't see. And it's like...
Yeah, just from, like, an artistic point of view, there's too many, like, manifestations of her fears. Like, obviously she's...
Very well said.
Now I'm just, like...
Yeah.
I totally agree with what you said about Desi, so now I'm just taking that and building on it. And so there's that. And then also, like, obviously the blindness is, like, her greatest fear. She can no longer write letters. But, girl, just, like, talking to a microphone, like, what? But they say, like,
I love your solutions-oriented mindset.
No, but I'm just like, it's not that big a deal.
Why the drama?
And also, like, it's hard for me to reconcile how bad Sybil feels about that one case with everything else we know about her character and her, like, black and white.
It was the time.
Yeah.
And it was the time in her life, and it was the fact that Desi was the age of Gilbert.
Yeah.
And she looked at him, and she couldn't look at him because it was the same age as her son.
Yeah.
And so he didn't have to die, right? He stayed alive, but his world had to crumble
change in
like
some
hers
way.
did.
Yeah, okay, yes.
All of that being said, yes, we can tie it in a literary way to the main plot. It doesn't mean that, like, it was the needed storyline.
Correct,
you know what I mean? Like, even as we're spending time talking and thinking about it, I'm even conscious of, like, the whole, like, triangle between her and Rosalie is the name of their best friend, and Fiona, her daughter,
Yeah.
is like, I think for me, so
She
much more
has-
of a central
yeah,
attention.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
it's like, I agree with you in the
Yeah.
sense that, like, it didn't, like, did we need it? Probably
But
not.
you know what?
I see why it
I
makes
think
sense.
you're making me realize that because it's epistolary, you probably have to have a lot of that stuff happening. The structure of the book is that there needs to be a lot of drama because things need to be recounted.
Right.
You know, like the author can't just like describe things happening in lifetime. Everything has to be like recounted through the lens of a letter. And so I feel like that leads to or lends itself to like a lot of these dramatic events. You know, I don't know how you do it, but like we could have gone deeper into that triangle that you just described. So basically,
Yes.
Sybil's
triangle,
Sybil's like kind of estranged from her daughter Fiona. Basically, Fiona lives abroad and has had a really hard time getting pregnant, but has not really shared much of this struggle with her mom. But I think it's deeper than that. I mean, I think Fiona feels that her mom has always like tried to maybe push her away, but more just like make sure that she could do things herself in a way that the brother was not really raised that way, kind of like as a defense mechanism almost. And Fiona has a close relationship with Rosalie, Sybil's best friend, who's her godmother, but not even like that close, I feel like. But anyway, in a moment of need, she goes and visits Rosalie. Rosalie doesn't tell Sybil, and then Sybil gets pissed because Sybil cares a lot. I think Sybil's very proud, but obviously she's really salty that she doesn't see her daughter much.
Yeah, I have to find, I think there's like a passage about this, but essentially there's just like, Sybil doesn't know why there's such a gap between them. And I find that so crazy, right? Because in terms of her relationships, and I'm not like defending her in any way.
I know. Yeah.
But like in terms of her other relationships, she's so meticulously like, you know, with Rosalie, she has every knowledge about this person's everyday life. Like with Harry, she has this intimacy.
Yeah.
And it seems for her very hard to understand why she doesn't have it with Fiona. And it's like, she never sees her. She doesn't seem, you know, they don't communicate in the same way. They just seem very different. And it doesn't seem like she compromises at all in terms of like trying to meet, her daughter where she's at. Yeah. Even though she's the mother figure. Yeah. I think she's also, they just communicate in a very different way. Like I think about her, she's talking about like being direct versus indirect, and that her daughter seems to be much more wanting things to like look a certain way or like be a certain way. And she says like, people tell you they want to hear the truth, but they do not. And if you tell the truth, it will come back to bite you like a snake finding its own tail to swallow. I also think she doesn't like Fiona's husband, right? Which is like a tension with them. But it also is a good sort of encapsulation, I think, of how tension can just kind of like build up in a relationship until it becomes this ambiguous, like, we're just not close.
We don't even know what the original fight was about. Yeah.
Right. And I think that that's what Rosalie tries to communicate with Sybil. It seems like your daughter really cares about you and really wants this connection. And Sybil is stunned by this and is like, well, why would she not? Yeah. She never writes to me, right? And it's kind of like she doesn't communicate like that. So I don't know. How did you think about it?
It is kind of crazy though, because I almost feel a little bit jealous that Sybil was able to like resolve all these problems in her life. Like I don't know how you feel about it. Like it's really, I didn't feel
it's
like
a novel.
Yeah,
to be fair.
But like I just don't, like she resolved her relationship with her daughter. She like fell in love with her neighbor. The Desi guy she reconciled with. Like Bazem gets a job. Harry goes to MIT.
I love it.
Yeah, you love it. I love it too. But I'm kind of jealous. Like I just don't. I'm worried life is not actually like that.
It's not like that.
Okay.
I don't think that this is meant to be an accurate depiction
like
of life.
Wish fulfillment, yeah.
But it's also like she's dying, right? Like I think there's.
It does kind of suck that all this happens like right, but she can't enjoy it for that long. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the tension, right? Like I think, I don't know. I'm curious what you think in terms of like a moral of the story or kind of a takeaway. Because for me, so much of what I read in her was this person who created a world where she restricted her own success and set her own limits to be very specific. But I think she created a lot of like traps for herself in life of like she only worked in this one way for this one guy and she did what. But that's obviously like you can tell in my analysis everything about how I'm different from that. Like, or things that would freak me out or stress me out. But then by the end, she's like opened herself up to learning more about her past, right? Which she's really resistant to at the beginning.
That's true. She's
learning
super
about her
closed
daughter,
off.
who she doesn't know and then gets to know, right?
But how did what is like the impetus for all this personal change? Like, it's kind of like, I'm starting to feel real skeptical. Like, okay, I don't know.
Like that it's unrealistic that over the last 10 years of your life.
So much? Yeah, now that we're going through all of them. 70 years versus, but maybe it can happen. Yeah, I don't know. Keep going. Yeah.
I'm curious, your thoughts on that more, because I feel like facing death is really different.
Yeah.
Than the rest of life.
Yeah.
And I don't know how often you think about death. For me, not that much.
Oh, really? I'm so scared of dying. You don't think about dying? Okay.
That's so funny, because my other friend who's so obsessed with reading, that Trevor was telling you about, I'm super obsessed with dying. Right? And not like that he wants to die, but that he is so afraid of it and loves life so much and is so afraid
of dying. You know how people are like, oh, I would never want to live forever. Like, that's going to be horrible. I'm like, I will live forever.
Like, you're like, I'm
down. I'm fine. I don't care if I have to be in a sack. Like, I'm so scared of not existing.
Wow.
I would love to know what Trevor thinks about that.
Yeah, so maybe you'll have a
dying
crazy...
like every day. Yeah. I really want to get over it though. Chloe Zhao has a good like quote about how she trained as a death doula. Yeah. Chloe. I saw that and I was like, should I do that? Like, maybe it would really help me get over being scared of dying.
To watch a bunch of people die.
Yeah, maybe then it would be like, this is so natural, this is part of life.
This is my job.
Life only makes sense when you die. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe. I mean,
I don't know. But but I think you're onto something about like the last bit being very different than like maybe now that she's faced with like her eyesight leaving and her impending death, I guess that's could be a good like driver for all this personal change.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with your point that it's unrealistic that it would happen. It is a book. But I also think, like, she she confronts, ultimately, right, like, the thing she's confronting is the death of her son.
Yeah.
And the honesty with which she expresses that is amazing. And I think also the fact that she never writes the letter back to her ex-husband who dies, and you read sort of at the end of the novel all the starts that she took to that. Yeah. You know, so she didn't resolve everything.
Yeah, that's true. And it's so crazy. The only person she tells about... So Gilbert dies in a drowning accident. That's what everyone knows. But actually what happens that we learn from a letter she writes to her lover, Theodore, is that his name? Yeah. Is that she was busy working and she didn't look up to see where her son was. And the place that her son was diving from was actually shallow and was not the end of the pier. So she said, go for it. And then he snapped his neck on the bottom of the lake. Yeah. So she feels like immense direct guilt. But she didn't even tell her husband that. Am I wrong?
She never tells her husband.
Yeah, so of course their marriage, like, that is such a deep secret to hold on to for all of your life. I feel like that was enough. I mean, it's hard if you're telling a book through letters, but I feel like that was enough. We didn't need all these, like, other side stories. But that one I felt was like I probably won't have kids, but it does seem like losing. And actually, the author says in the postscript, one of her friend's kids passed away while she was writing the book.
Oh, wow.
And so I think that's why it was such a big part of the book. Yeah.
That's awful. Then actually, I think under that reading, she's probably facing death every day from that moment. I think so. So maybe my theory that when she's herself closer to death, things get resolved doesn't work, because she was engaging with death the whole time. But I also think...
But in a very different way. Like, it was really just, I feel like, guilt. Yeah. It was just like like she felt like she needed to punish herself. I mean, they didn't do therapy back then. I feel like part of her she was broken from that. And it was, like, very hard for her to cope. To your question about what would I take away as, like, a moral, I really think one of the key themes in the book is, like, how to feel at home in yourself, you know?
Love it.
Which I feel like is my life's project. Like, I don't really want to get better at knowing other things. I just want to get better at, like, knowing myself.
Queen.
And just, like, knowing how I will react and what I need and all that stuff. So I think I'm particularly sensitive to it. But a lot of times, different characters in the book talk about, like, Bosom when he gets his job, working on something you know really well, and feeling like you're like in your flow state or whatever is like being a part of music. I forgot the exact quote, but he feels like, oh, this is who I am. Like this is really like where I'm meant to be. And then I think it's a big theme for Sybil as well. I feel like because she from a young age felt different and she was really felt a certain type of way about being adopted, always tried to like find like her place in herself and in the world. And I just think that that's like what we all should be doing, and like that should be like the overall goal, right? Because like it's never about like what other people want or trying to do what society wants. It should just be about like, you know, finding your own path. And I feel like a lot of the characters do that, like especially like Harry. It's all about accepting who he is and realizing that like all of this negative feedback he's getting is not because of him. It's because there's something wrong with like our society and like the people around him. I love that message, and I think it was like nicely like interweaved throughout the book.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. To what you're saying on the self project, I think there's so much beauty in how she reflects on herself and on her life, and just in as an older woman too. There's a part of me that's like, this is so indulgent. You know what I mean? Of this woman, like we're just reading old letters from one old lady. Like, why would this ever matter? And I think in the sort of banality of the methods of communication, it reveals this universal like individuality that each of us have that is never appreciated for its richness, like in each of our individual lives. And it's beautiful to see that, especially from an older woman, is like not a social figure that we see as being worthy of hundreds
like
of pages.
That time and care. And she even says it herself, like, why do I write letters? Like, just imagine all the ephemera of your life just existing in like texts and emails. Maybe like 2 generations from now, like someone will name their kid after you because they like your name, but like that's just a bloodline. It's nothing about like the richness of your life, the relationships you have. It feeds my soul a little bit that we are spending so much time with this one lady who is like so complex and so has like such an interesting life.
This is so fun.
Is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I feel like that was perfect.
I feel like we covered all of it.
Amazing.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks for having me
on
your
your
pod.
God. Thanks for doing this with me,
it.
Sophie. I really appreciate your time. And thanks for buying the book for me. I really enjoyed it.
Amazing.
It was so easy to read. It was like really like
fun.
Compelling.
Gripping. I love that I got to hold this mug like I'm on an actual podcast.
Girl, I can give you a drink.
I love it. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.